The howl of artillery breaks the dawn in Donetsk Oblast. Smoke rises over battered buildings. Somewhere ahead, the fate of a city, and the lives of its defenders, hang in the balance. This is Myrnohrad. The ground is shifting. In the last 24 hours, the command of the Russian forces, under Valery Gerasimov, claimed a decisive push toward the beleaguered town of Myrnohrad, alleging that Russian troops now control over 30% of the town's infrastructure. Moscow further declared that the neighboring city Pokrovsk has been fully captured, and that Ukrainian units around Myrnohrad are encircled, their supply lines severed, their fate sealed. Outside voices say otherwise. Official spokespeople for the armed forces of Ukraine insist that Myrnohrad remains under Ukrainian control, that no full encirclement has taken place, and that logistics are still functioning, albeit under severe pressure. Ukrainian commanders describe the front line as difficult and dynamic. Reports warn of gray zones around the town, but no definitive collapse yet. Between these competing claims lies a brutal reality. On the ground, Ukrainian defenders have pulled back, not in panic, but in an organized maneuver. Units were rotated to more sustainable positions near Lysivka and Sukhyi Yar, about as close as one can get to safety under fire. Meanwhile, the Russian advance has not been smooth or clean. Armored columns, including units from the 40th Naval Infantry Brigade, attempted mechanized assaults under foggy winter cover. Some vehicles were lost, immobilized in anti-tank ditches or destroyed by drone-guided fire from Ukrainian defenders. But losses have not deterred the wave of pressure. Every hour, reports of shelling, drone bombings, and artillery fire land around the edges of Myrnohrad. Ukrainian defenses are being ground down, even if the center doesn't collapse, and even if some supply corridors remain tenuous. This is no longer about lines on a map. It is a crucible of human endurance. Civilians in the surrounding villages and outskirts have fled or hunkered in basements. Supply convoys struggle to thread through dangerous territory. Ukrainian soldiers, many exhausted, some wounded, rotate in and out in an effort to hold what remains. As Russia pursues this push, it is not merely a military gambit. It is a psychological blow. The collapse of Myrnohrad, if it comes, would tear open one of the last urban shield points standing between advancing Russian forces and the larger Ukrainian-held cities to the north, Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. But for now, the outcome remains uncertain. Ukrainian command says they are still holding, Russian command says they are closing the net. Neither side offers clarity. In this fog of war, the next hours will matter more than the last weeks. The ground trembles under artillery and drones. Myrnohrad's defenders brace for what may be the final test. The air over Myrnohrad trembles again. Russian glide bombs slash through winter skies, mortar rounds hammer the outskirts. The thick fog of early morning falls like a curtain, but Ukrainian defenders refuse to stay hidden. Drones cut through the haze. The fight resumes. Ukrainian units, battered but unbroken, declare that the defense of Myrnohrad still holds. Commanders from the armed forces of Ukraine report that supply corridors remain open and reinforcements continue to trickle in through narrow, dangerous routes. Even as enemy units press from the south and east, the defenders insist, the city is not lost, not yet. Still, the pressure is mounting. Over the past days, the southern villages of Lysivka and Sukhyi Yar, once forward positions shielding Myrnohrad, were abandoned. The withdrawal was not panic, but calculated. Ukrainian forces repositioned to stronger defensive ground, preserving manpower and consolidating their lines. What had been a buffer zone is now Kremlin-held territory, and with it, a portion of the defenders' tactical depth has been lost. The outer ring is gone, the fight is tightening. Across open fields and in dim industrial alleys, the assault units of the 40th Naval Infantry Brigade attempted a mechanized push under cover of winter fog. Their turtle tanks rumbled forward, armored beasts creeping toward urban sprawl. Moscow's engineers hoped the fog would blind Ukrainian drone and reconnaissance wings. But those hopes crashed when Ukrainian drones lit up the terrain. 11 Russian armored vehicles burned, engulfed in fire before they could reach cover. The message was stark: even in darkness and cold, the defenders still strike. Night does not offer respite. Russian command appears to have doubled down. Supplies of glide bombs and artillery shells have spiked. Reports from local military administration chart repeated shelling of residential zones, factory warehouses, anything that might double as cover for defenders or civilians. The smoke rising from burning buildings paints the skyline of Myrnohrad, a warning to all who remain. Civilian residents have vanished from streets. Some fled west, Others hide underground, basements becoming tombs of desperation. Food, water, ammunition, all are scarce enough that small drone deliveries have become a lifeline. And yet, amid the ruin, there are still those who refuse to yield. Ukrainian commanders coordinate low-visibility operations, search and assault raids inside nearby contested zones, sniper and sabotage units strike at incoming Russian resupply convoys, and engineers reinforce barricades around destroyed buildings. According to reports from the local operational group East, these operations aim to deny Russian forces any undisputed foothold inside the city. Behind the lines, morale flutters between resolve and exhaustion. Veterans of earlier sieges draw on memory. The price of retreat has always been steep. The defenders know what's at stake. Myrnohrad is not just another town. It is a bulwark, the shield between Russian forces pressing west and the heartlands of Ukrainian-held Donetsk cities. If that shield cracks, the consequences could echo far beyond its ruined streets. For now, though, the lines still hold. The night is cold, the bombs still fall, but Myrnohrad's defenders remain, steeled by defiance, clinging to every scrap of supply, every inch of cover, every moment before the next assault. A deep, rolling concussion shakes the ground beneath Myrnohrad as another series of Russian glide bombs slams into the northern districts. Windows that survived the previous barrage finally give way. Dust pours into defensive shelters. The sound is overwhelming, a steady, unbroken rhythm of pressure designed to wear down the last reserves of strength among the Ukrainian troops still holding the line. What had begun as an attempt to force local withdrawals has now expanded into a sustained effort to grind the city's defensive core into submission. Across the front line, Ukrainian commanders continue to coordinate under conditions that grow more punishing by the hour. Reports from operational groups indicate that drone reconnaissance remains the most reliable tool the defenders possess. When visibility is crushed by fog or smoke, drones become the only eyes capable of seeing beyond the next ruined block. They direct counter-battery crews toward Russian artillery placements and track armored columns searching for weak points in the defensive web. Even as Ukrainian units remain outnumbered and under constant bombardment, drones provide fleeting but vital moments of initiative, brief openings to disrupt Russian momentum before it consolidates. Further behind Russian lines, additional assault elements from naval infantry and motorized rifle brigades have repositioned. Analysts studying satellite imagery describe a pattern that often precedes a fresh wave of assaults: armored groups dispersing across tree lines, infantry units concentrating near industrial ruins east of the city, and supply trucks moving at irregular intervals to avoid Ukrainian fire correction. Russian commanders appear determined to tighten the southern prongs of their advance, hoping to isolate the remaining Ukrainian positions block by block rather than through a single decisive breakthrough. Each shift in the battle space hints at a new trial for the defenders, and a new set of calculations for Kyiv's high command. Inside Myrnohrad, residents who once hesitated to evacuate now rush toward any available route heading west. Ukrainian civil-military officials warn that humanitarian corridors are unstable, but the fear of encirclement has become stronger than the fear of the road. In some neighborhoods, the only functioning support comes from volunteer teams who navigate debris-clogged streets with small vehicles and body armor, delivering water, medical supplies, and evacuation guidance. The pressure on these teams has increased dramatically as Russian shelling targets utilities, warehouses, and transit points that had once offered brief moments of safety. As the city endures its most difficult hours, the broader frontline reveals the strategic consequences unfolding beyond Myrnohrad. Russian missiles and drones have struck multiple regions across Ukraine, forcing Kyiv to divert air defense assets to protect energy infrastructure and military sites. These strikes are not random. They align with a broader pattern of attempting to overload Ukraine's defensive network, stretching it thin while ground forces push forward in Donetsk Oblast. Each attack adds another layer of complexity to the Ukrainian command's decisions: how to distribute scarce resources, where to reinforce, and what risks must be taken to keep supply routes alive. International responses reflect growing concern. Officials from NATO member states have condemned the intensifying Russian push, emphasizing the critical importance of continued military assistance to Ukraine. Recent statements highlight stepped-up deliveries of air defense interceptors, artillery shells, and electronic warfare tools designed to counter Russian drones. While none of these measures directly shift the pressure on soldiers fighting inside Myrnohrad at this moment, they signal that Ukraine's allies understand the stakes, that the battle unfolding here is part of a wider contest shaping the stability of the region. Back at the front line, Ukrainian forces continue to rotate units through the most heavily targeted sectors to prevent exhaustion. Infantry who have held the same trench for hours under relentless fire are pulled back, replaced by fresh teams who sprint in through narrow alleys and rubble-filled corridors. Combat medics work with extraordinary speed, stabilizing the wounded before rushing them toward the remaining evacuation routes that still function under fire. Every successful extraction is a small victory in a fight defined by attrition, where survival alone becomes a form of resistance. Night returns, but the darkness offers no relief. Russian units probe through the outskirts, seeking gaps in Ukrainian defenses. The defenders respond with coordinated fire, striking at advance elements, forcing them back into contested blocks. Amid the chaos, both sides know that the battle for Myrnohrad is not decided by a single assault but by endurance, by who can continue fighting when the city seems determined to collapse upon itself. Despite the hardship, the Ukrainian defensive line has not broken. Russian troops move closer, the pressure mounts, yet the defenders remain. Their survival reshapes the battlefield hour by hour, preserving the fragile continuity of Ukraine's positions in the region. Whether Myrnohrad holds or falls, what happens here will influence the next phase of the war, for the soldiers entrenched in its ruins, for the civilians fleeing its streets, and for the leaders watching from far beyond the front line.